The fluorescent lights of Mario's diner buzzed like angry wasps overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow over the cracked linoleum floor I'd been mopping for the past 6 hours. My feet screamed in protest. The cheap sneakers I'd bought from the thrift store doing nothing to cushion the endless standing, the constant movement between tables and the kitchen, and the counter where orders piled up faster than I could deliver them. Just 3 more hours, I told myself, wringing out the mop with hands that had gone numb an hour ago. 3 more hours and you can go home. Except home wasn't really home anymore, it was a studio apartment. I was 2 weeks away from losing. A space so small I could touch both walls if I stretched my arms out. The eviction notice sat on my counter like a death sentence, red letters screaming that I had 14 days to come up with 2 months' rent or find myself on the street. "Vanessa!" Mario's voice cracked through the diner like a whip. "Table 12 needs service." I looked up, exhaustion making my vision swim. Table 12 sat in the corner booth, the one we usually reserved for late-night stragglers who wanted privacy. But it wasn't even midnight yet, and the man who just slid into that booth didn't look like our usual clientele. He looked like danger wrapped in a $3,000 suit. My breath caught as I took him, and dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp cheekbones casting shadows across olive skin, and eyes so dark they appeared black in the diner's harsh lighting. But it wasn't his looks that made my stomach drop. It was the way he commanded the space around him, the way the very air seemed to shift and bend to accommodate his presence. 2 men flanked him, standing rather than sitting, their eyes scanning the diner with the cold efficiency of security cameras. They wore dark suits that didn't quite hide the bulges beneath their jackets, bulges I recognized from the crime shows. I watched when I couldn't sleep, when the fear of homelessness kept me awake. Guns. "Vanessa, now!" Mario hissed, and I realized I'd been standing frozen, staring. I grabbed my notepad with shaking hands and forced my feet to move, crossing the checkered floor toward the corner booth. Each step felt like walking toward the edge of a cliff, and some primal part of my brain screamed at me to turn around, to run, to get as far away from this man as possible. But I needed this job. I needed every tip, every hour, every possible shift to save the apartment that was all I had left after my mother's death 6 months ago. "Good evening," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Can I get you something?" He didn't look up immediately. Instead, he was reading something on his phone, his jaw tight with concentration or anger, I couldn't tell which. The silence stretched, and I became acutely aware of how close I was standing. Close enough to smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke, and something else I couldn't name. Then he lifted his eyes, and the world tilted. I'd never believed in that romance novel nonsense about eyes meeting across a room and time stopping, but in that moment, I understood. His gaze hit me like a physical force, dark and assessing and so intense I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't attraction, or at least, it wasn't just attraction, it was recognition, as if he was reading every secret I'd ever kept, every fear I'd ever harbored, every desperate thought that had crossed my mind in the past 2 weeks. "Coffee?" he said, his voice low and rough, textured like expensive whiskey. "Black, of course." I scribbled it down, though my hand trembled slightly. "Anything else? What time does your shift end?" The question came so unexpectedly that I nearly dropped my notepad. I looked up sharply, meeting his eyes again, searching for mockery or lecherous intent, the kind I'd learned to spot in the 6 years I'd been waitressing. But his expression remained unreadable, his face a beautiful mask that revealed nothing. That's not really appropriate," I managed, my professional smile feeling plastic on my face. "I'm not trying to be inappropriate." He set his phone down with deliberate care. "You look exhausted. When does your shift end?" Something about the way he said it, not a pickup line but a genuine question, made my defenses crack slightly. 2 a.m., but I'm fine. I'll get your coffee." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "You're not fine." I spun back, anger flaring through the exhaustion. "Excuse me? You've been on your feet for hours, your hands are shaking, and you have shadows under your eyes that suggest you haven't slept properly in weeks." He leaned back in the booth, studying me with that unsettling intensity. "So no, you're not fine." Heat flooded my cheeks, embarrassment mixed with fury. "My personal life isn't your concern." "Maybe not." He tilted his head slightly, a ghost of something that might have been amusement crossing his features. "But I'm making it my concern." "Why?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "Why would someone like you care about someone like me?" The moment the words left my mouth, I wanted to take them back. I'd revealed too much: the desperation, the bone-deep weariness, the fear that I was drowning and no one could see me going under. His expression changed then. Something flickering in those dark eyes, understanding. Maybe, or recognition of pain he knew too well. Because I recognize a fighter when I see one. And you're fighting a losing battle. I'm managing, I said through gritted teeth. Are you? He pulled something from his jacket, a black card that caught the light. Then you won't need this. He held it out and I stared at it stupidly. What is that? A key card to a penthouse I own downtown. It's empty, I don't use it. You can stay there until you get back on your feet. My heart hammered against my bed. Ribs. I don't even know you. Why would you? Mr. Moretti. Mario's voice cracked across the diner, and I turned to see my boss practically running toward us, his face red and sweating. I didn't know you'd be visiting us tonight. Please, let me get you anything you need. Moretti. The name hit me like ice water. I'd heard it before, whispered on the news, muttered by customers who read the crime section of the paper. The Moretti family controlled half the city's underground, their influence reaching into businesses, politics, and places the police didn't dare to look. This man, this beautiful, dangerous man offering me salvation, was the head of the most powerful crime family in the city. I'm fine, Mario, he said without looking at my boss, his eyes still locked on mine. I was just having a conversation with your waitress. Of course. Vanessa is one of our best. Anything she can do for you. She's already done it. Moretti stood in one fluid motion, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. He was tall, over 6 feet and up close. The raw power emanating from him was almost overwhelming. He pressed the key card into my hand, his fingers brushing mine for just a second, and that brief contact sent electricity racing up my arm. The address is on the back. Consider it an offer with no strings attached. I can't accept this, I whispered, even as my fingers closed around the card. You already have. He leaned in slightly, close enough that I could feel the heat of his body, close enough that his next words were for me alone. Everyone needs saving sometimes, Vanessa. Even people who think they can do it alone. Then he was moving past me, his men falling into step behind him, and the diner felt suddenly too bright, too loud, too ordinary after his presence. I stood there, clutching the key card, my name printed on the back beneath an address I recognized, the most expensive building in the city, the kind of place that appeared in magazines as a symbol of impossible luxury. Mario was talking, saying something about what an honor it was, how we should consider ourselves blessed by the visit. But I couldn't hear him over the roaring in my ears. Lucian Moretti, Mafia boss, criminal, dangerous man, had just handed me the keys to a penthouse, and God help me, I was actually considering using them. The key card burned in my pocket for the rest of my shift like a live coal, its presence impossible to ignore, even as I poured coffee and cleared tables and tried to pretend my entire world hadn't just tilted on its axis. Don't be stupid, I told myself for the 100th time as I wiped down the counter at 1:30 in the morning. You don't accept gifts from mob bosses. That's like rule number 1 of staying alive. But my feet ached with a pain that had gone beyond physical discomfort into something close to agony. My back screamed from hours of bending and lifting. And when I thought about going back to my studio apartment, to the eviction notice, to the empty refrigerator, to the thin walls that let in every sound from my neighbors' fights, something inside me cracked. I was so tired of being strong, so tired of fighting alone. You okay, Chica? Rosa, the night cook, emerged from the kitchen with concern etched across her weathered face. She'd worked at Mario's longer than anyone, had watched me go from a scared 18-year-old to whatever I was now at 24. You've been weird since that man left. I'm fine. I lied automatically. Bullshit. She crossed her arms, her expression knowing. That was Lucian Moretti. Everyone knows who he is. What did he say to you? I hesitated, then pulled out the key card. Rosa's eyes went wide. Dios mío, she breathed. Did he? He offered me a place to stay. Said it was empty. No strings attached. Even to my own ears. It sounded insane. Rosa was quiet for a long moment, studying my face with the kind of perception that came from raising 5 children and surviving 40 years in this city. And you're thinking about accepting? It wasn't a question. I'm being evicted in 2 weeks, I admitted, the words tasting like failure. I've picked up every shift I can, but it's not enough. I'm drowning, Rosa. She reached out and squeezed my shoulder, her calloused hand warm through my uniform. Men like Moretti don't give without expecting something in return, Mija. Even if he says there are no strings. I know. I did know. I wasn't naive. But I was also desperate, and desperation made people do things they'd never consider otherwise. But what if he's telling the truth? What if I could have just a few weeks to catch my breath? To save enough for a deposit somewhere else? And what if you can't? Rose's voice was gentle but firm. What if you go into that world and can't find your way out? I didn't have an answer for that. At 2 a.m., I clocked out and stood on the street corner outside Mario's diner, the key, card in one hand, and my phone in the other. The address glowed on the screen. Apex Towers, Penthouse 4. 40 stories of glass and steel that pierced the night sky like a shard of crystal, visible even from here in the gritty neighborhood where I worked. This is crazy, I thought. Absolutely insane. But my feet were already moving toward the subway station. The train was nearly empty at this hour, just a handful of night shift workers and a homeless man sleeping across 3 seats. I sat near the window and watched my reflection in the dark glass pale skin. Auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, green eyes that looked too big in my thin face. I looked exactly like what I was, a girl in over her head playing with fire. The train rattled through tunnels, and with each stop the neighborhoods changed. Graffiti-covered walls gave way to cleaner stations. The passengers who boarded wore better clothes, carried briefcases instead of plastic bags. By the time I reached the downtown stop, I was the only person in my worn waitress uniform, and I felt every stare like a brand. Apex Towers loomed above me as I emerged onto the street, its glass facade reflecting the city lights in 1,000 glittering points. The lobby was visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, all marble and modern art, and a concierge desk that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. I almost turned around. Almost. But then I thought about the eviction notice, about sleeping in my car or on Rose's couch, about losing the last piece of my mother I had left, and I walked through those gleaming doors. The concierge looked up as I approached, his expression shifting from professional welcome to barely concealed skepticism as he took in my appearance. "Can I help you?" I held up the key card, my hand steadier than I felt. "I'm here for Penthouse 4. His eyebrows rose so high they nearly reached his hairline. He took the card, scanned it, and his expression transformed into something close to shock when the system beeped approval. "Of course, miss." He glanced at his screen. "Miss Barrett, the private elevator is to your right. The code is 4782. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and moved toward the elevator before he could ask questions I couldn't answer. The doors were polished brass, reflecting a distorted version of myself, small, uncertain, completely out of place. The code worked. The elevator rose so smoothly I barely felt the movement. Just watched the floor numbers climb higher and higher until they stopped at 40. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. I stepped out and forgot how to breathe. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 3 sides of the space, offering a view of the city that belonged in movies, not real life. The skyline glittered like scattered diamonds, and I could see everything: the river cutting through downtown, the bridges spanning it in arcs of light, the distant mountains silhouetted against the star-scattered sky. The apartment itself was enormous, all clean lines and expensive furniture arranged with the kind of casual elegance that spoke of professional designers and unlimited budgets. A kitchen with marble countertops and appliances I'd only seen in magazines. A living area with leather sofas and abstract art on the walls. And through an open doorway, I glimpsed a bedroom dominated by a bed that could easily sleep 4 people. This wasn't just a penthouse. This was a different world entirely. I walked to the windows on shaking legs, pressing my palm against the cool glass. From up here, the city looked beautiful instead of brutal, its harshness softened by distance and height. I could almost forget the reality of the streets below: the crime, the struggle, the constant fight for survival. This is temporary, I reminded myself. Just until you get back on your feet, then you walk away. But even as I thought it, I knew I was lying to myself. Because standing here in Lucian Moretti's penthouse, looking out over a city that suddenly seemed conquerable instead of crushing, I felt something I hadn't felt in 6 months. Hope. And hope, I was beginning to realize, was the most dangerous thing of all. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. An unknown number, a single text message: "Sleep well, Vanessa. We'll talk tomorrow. L.M." I stared at those words, my heart hammering. He'd known I would come. Had been so certain that he'd already programmed his number into the system, Already planned this next move like a chess master playing several games ahead. I should have been terrified. Should have run back to the elevator and never looked back. Instead, I typed out a response with trembling fingers. "Thank you." The reply came almost instantly. "Don't thank me yet." And as I stood there in the dark, surrounded by luxury I'd never dreamed of touching, I wondered what he meant. What price would I eventually pay for accepting salvation from a man whose business was built on violence and blood? I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a disorienting moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The bed beneath me was too soft, the sheets too expensive, the silence too complete. Then memory crashed back: the diner, the key card, the decision that had brought me here. Lucian Moretti's penthouse. I sat up slowly, taking in the bedroom in daylight. Everything was pristine, almost untouched, as if the space existed in a state of perpetual waiting. The furniture was modern and masculine, dark woods and clean lines, but there were no personal touches. No photographs, no books left on nightstands, no clothing draped over chairs. It felt less like someone's home and more like an expensive hotel room. "He doesn't use it," he'd said. And looking around, I believed him. My phone showed 8:30, which meant I'd slept for barely 5 hours. But it was the deepest sleep I'd had in weeks, my body finally surrendering to exhaustion in a bed that felt like sleeping on clouds. I'd been too tired last night to do more than kick off my shoes and collapse fully clothed onto the mattress. Now, in the harsh light of morning, the insanity of my decision felt unavoidable. I'd accepted help from a Mafia boss. I was living in his property, and I had absolutely no idea what he'd expect in return. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. I padded barefoot into the kitchen, half expecting it to be as empty as the rest of the apartment. Instead, I found the refrigerator fully stocked: fresh fruits, vegetables, premium cuts of meat, imported cheeses. The pantry held pasta, rice, canned goods, and spices I'd only seen in cooking shows. A note sat on the counter, written in bold, efficient handwriting: "Eat, rest. Someone will deliver your belongings from your apartment this afternoon. Make yourself at home. L.M." My hands shook as I held the paper. He'd already sent someone to my apartment. Already assumed I'd stay, that I'd accept this arrangement. The presumption should have angered me, but instead, I felt a strange mixture of relief and unease. Relief because I wouldn't have to face my landlord, wouldn't have to pack my few possessions under the weight of failure. Unease because Lucian Moretti was making decisions about my life, moving pieces on a board I didn't fully understand. I made coffee with a machine that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and stood at the windows watching the city wake up. From this height, the morning rush looked almost peaceful, cars flowing like rivers, people reduced to distant dots moving with purpose through their lives. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number, but somehow I knew it wasn't him. "Car will arrive at 10 a.m. Mr. Moretti would like to see you. Dress is casual." Marcus. I checked the time. 90 minutes. My reflection in the bathroom mirror was brutal, hair tangled from sleep, yesterday's makeup smudged beneath my eyes, my waitress uniform wrinkled and stained. I looked exactly like someone who'd stumbled into a life they had no business living. The bathroom was a revelation of marble and chrome, with a rainfall shower that had more settings than my car. I stood under water hot enough to turn my skin pink, using products that smelled like lavender and cost more than my weekly grocery budget. For 20 minutes, I let myself pretend this was normal, that I belonged here, that I wasn't terrified of what came next. I had no clean clothes except what I'd worn yesterday, so I put them back on and tried not to think about meeting Lucian Moretti looking like a charity case. My hair dried in loose waves around my shoulders, the most effort I could manage without proper supplies. At exactly 10:04 a.m., the concierge called. "Miss Barrett, your car has arrived." Your car. As if I were the kind of person who had cars waiting for her. The elevator ride down felt longer than the one up, each floor a countdown to a meeting I wasn't prepared for. In the lobby, a man in a black suit stood near the entrance, tall, broad-shouldered, with the same watchful intensity as the men who'd flanked Lucian at the diner. "Miss Barrett." He nodded once. "I'm Marcus. Mr. Moretti is waiting." The car was a sleek black Mercedes with windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Marcus opened the back door, and I slid in before I could talk myself out of it. Lucian sat in the far corner, looking nothing like he had last night. Gone was the three-piece suit. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a black Henley that clung to a body that clearly didn't spend all its time behind a desk. His hair was slightly damp, as if he'd recently showered. And without the formal clothing, he looked younger, maybe early 30s, instead of the ageless authority he'd projected at the diner. But his eyes were the same, dark and assessing and far too knowing. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying that same rough texture that had haunted my dreams. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes. Thank you." The formality felt absurd in the intimate space of the car. "Where are we going?" "Breakfast." He studied me with an intensity that made me want to squirm. "You look better. Less like you're about to collapse." "I wasn't," I started, then stopped. There was no point in lying to someone who'd seen through me so easily. "Thank you. For the penthouse. For everything. You already thanked me." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "I don't need your gratitude, Vanessa. I need you to eat properly and stop working yourself to death." The presumption in his words sparked my temper. "You don't get to make decisions about my life." "No?" He leaned back, his posture deceptively relaxed. "Then you're free to leave. I'll have Marcus take you back to your apartment, to your eviction notice, and your empty refrigerator." "Is that what you want?" I wanted to say yes. Wanted to reclaim some dignity, some control over my spiraling life. But the words stuck in my throat, because we both knew the truth. I needed him, and he knew it. That's what I thought. His voice softened slightly, losing some of its edge. "I'm not your enemy, Vanessa, but I am someone who gets what he wants. And right now, what I want is to make sure you don't destroy yourself trying to survive alone." "Why?" The question burst out, desperate and raw. "Why do you care? You don't know me. I'm nobody. You're not nobody." The words were sharp, almost angry. "Don't ever say that again." The vehemence in his tone shocked me into silence. We stared at each other in the moving car, and something passed between us, a current of understanding. Of shared pain, perhaps, though I couldn't imagine what pain someone like him could possibly know. "My mother," he said finally, his voice carefully controlled, "worked 3 jobs to keep me fed after my father died. I watched her wear herself down to nothing, watched her pride, stop her from accepting help even when she was drowning." His jaw tightened. "I couldn't save her, but I can save you." The revelation hung in the air between us, heavy with emotion he clearly didn't want to show. I saw past the expensive clothes, past the power and danger, to something human and broken underneath. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be sorry. Just let me help." He reached across the space between us, his hand hovering near mine but not quite touching. "No strings, Vanessa." I meant what I said. I looked at his hand, strong, scarred across the knuckles, capable of both violence and gentleness, and I realized that whatever this was between us, it had stopped being simple the moment our eyes met in that diner. This wasn't just charity. It was something far more complicated. The car pulled to a stop outside a small cafe tucked into a quiet street, nothing like the upscale restaurants I'd expected. Through the window, I could see a cozy interior, mismatched furniture, and the kind of warm lighting that made everything feel safe. "You brought me to a cafe?" I couldn't hide my surprise. His almost smile returned. "What did you expect? Some underground lair where we discuss illegal activities over espresso?" "Despite everything," I laughed. The sound surprised us both. "There she is," he said softly, his dark eyes warm. "I was wondering if you remembered how." And as Marcus opened the door and Lucian climbed out, offering his hand to help me from the car, I realized I was in far more danger than I'd thought. Not from his world, his power, or his connections, but from the way my heart raced when he looked at me. The cafe was called Rosemary's, and it smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread and the kind of comfort I hadn't felt since before my mother died. The owner, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes, greeted Lucian with genuine warmth, not the fear-tinged respect I'd seen from Mario. "Luca!" She kissed both his cheeks, then swatted his arm. 3 weeks without a visit. You trying to break my heart?" "Never, Rosie." His entire demeanor shifted in her presence, softer, almost boyish. "I've been busy." "Too busy for your godmother?" She turned her sharp gaze on me, and I felt suddenly exposed. "And who is this lovely girl you've brought to corrupt with my pastries?" "Vanessa Barrett." Lucian's hand found the small of my back, a touch so casual it felt practiced. "Vanessa, this is Rosemary Chen. She's been feeding me since I was 8 years old, and you were a scrawny thing then too," Rosie said, but her eyes were assessing me with the kind of perception that saw past surfaces. "Vanessa, pretty name. Come, sit." I'll bring you something that'll put color back in those cheeks." She swept away before I could protest, leaving Lucian and me alone in a corner booth that offered privacy from the handful of other customers. I slid in across from him, hyper-aware of how close we were in the intimate space. "Your godmother doesn't seem afraid of you," I observed. Rosie knew me before. He said it simply, but something in his tone suggested before carried weight. She sees the boy I was, not the man I became. "And what kind of boy were you?" His smile was bitter. The kind who thought he could protect everyone he loved, the kind who learned he couldn't. The pain in those words resonated with something deep in my chest. I'd been that kind of girl once, the one who thought she could save her mother from cancer through sheer force of will, through working extra shifts to pay for treatments insurance wouldn't cover, through believing love could defeat biology. "I know that feeling," I said quietly. His eyes met mine, and the understanding there made my breath catch. "I know you do. I saw it in you the moment I walked into that diner." "Is that why you helped me? Because I reminded you of yourself?" "Partly." He leaned back as Rosie appeared with coffee and plates piled high with French toast, scrambled, eggs, bacon, and pastries that looked like they'd been blessed by angels. But mostly because I couldn't stand watching someone fight alone when I had the means to help. Rosie set everything down with flourish, squeezed Lucian's shoulder affectionately, and disappeared again. The food smelled divine, and my stomach betrayed me with an embarrassingly loud growl. "Eat," Lucian commanded, but there was amusement in his voice. "You can interrogate me between bites." I didn't need to be told twice. The first bite of French toast was revelation crispy exterior, soft center, with a hint of vanilla and cinnamon that made me close my eyes in appreciation. When I opened them, Lucian was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing. It's just refreshing to see someone enjoy food without pretense." He took a sip of his coffee. "The women I usually eat with spend more time rearranging their plates than actually eating. The women you usually eat with are probably worried about maintaining appearances." I took another bite, past caring about looking ladylike. "I'm too hungry to care." "Good." Something like approval flickered across his face. "I prefer honesty to performance." We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and I marveled at how normal this felt sharing breakfast with a man who'd upended my life 24 hours ago. But underneath the normalcy, tension hummed like an electrical current. "I need to understand the rules," I said finally, setting down my fork. "You said no strings, but there have to be boundaries. Expectations." Lucian studied me over his coffee cup. Such as how long I can stay. What happens if when I get back on my feet? Whether you expect... I trailed off, heat flooding my cheeks. "Whether I expect you to sleep with me in exchange for housing?" His voice was flat, almost cold. "Is that what you're asking? I need to know what this is." I forced myself to meet his eyes, even though shame burned through me. Men don't just hand over penthouses without wanting something. Most men don't. He set down his cup with deliberate care. "But I'm not most men, Vanessa. When I want a woman in my bed, I don't have to bribe her with real estate." The arrogance in that statement should have irritated me. Instead, it sent an unwelcome thrill down my spine because I believed him. A man who looked like him, who carried power like a second skin, wouldn't need to buy companionship. "Then what do you want from me?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. He was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching my face as if trying to decide how much truth to reveal. "Honestly, I don't know yet, but whatever this is between us, it won't be transactional. You stay as long as you need, you leave whenever you want. No obligations. That's not how the world works. It's how my world works when I decide it does." He leaned forward, and suddenly the space between us felt charged, dangerous. "I have enough money to buy whatever I want, Vanessa. But I can't buy what I see in you, that stubborn determination to survive. That pride that won't let you break even when you should. That's not for sale." His words hit something raw inside me, and I had to look away before he saw too much. "You don't know me well enough to see those things, don't I?" His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with seduction and everything to do with recognition. "I know you worked a double shift on feet that were bleeding in your shoes. I know you haven't eaten a proper meal in weeks. I know you're scared, but you'd rather die than show it. Am I wrong?" I wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. He'd seen through me with terrifying accuracy, had read my secrets, like they were written across my skin. "Why does it matter to you?" I whispered. "Because someone should have cared about my mother before it was too late." The rawness in his admission made my chest ache. "Because I'm tired of watching people suffer when I have the power to stop it." "Because..." He stopped abruptly, his jaw tightening as if he'd said too much. "Because..." I prompted. But he shook his head, walls slamming back into place behind his eyes. "Finish your breakfast. We have somewhere else to be." "Where?" "Shopping. You need clothes." My pride bristled. "I have clothes. You have a waitress uniform and whatever was in your apartment." His tone brooked no argument. "If you're staying in my penthouse, you need a proper wardrobe. Non-negotiable." "I'm not your charity case," I said through gritted teeth. "No, you're not." He stood, pulling out his wallet and dropping several bills on the table, far more than the meal cost. "You're someone under my protection now, and people under my protection are treated appropriately." "I didn't ask for your protection, but you have it anyway." He offered his hand to help me from the booth, and when I hesitated, his expression softened slightly. "Let me do this, Vanessa. Please." That single word, "please," delivered in a voice that probably rarely used it, cracked something inside me. This wasn't about control or obligation. This was about a man trying to save someone the way he couldn't save his mother, trying to rewrite an ending that had already been written in his past. I took his hand and let him pull me to my feet. "One condition," I said as we headed for the door. "What's that?" "Nothing too expensive, and I get to pick what I like, not what you think I should wear." His almost smile returned, transforming his face into something that made my heart stutter. "Deal." As we stepped out into the morning sunlight, Rosie called after us. "You bring her back, Luca. I like this one." Lucian didn't respond, but his hand tightened almost imperceptibly on mine, and I realized with a jolt of fear that was equal parts terror and anticipation. I liked being the one Rosie approved of, liked the warmth in Lucian's eyes when he looked at me, liked feeling protected for the first time in 6 months. I was starting to like him, and that was the most dangerous development of all. The boutique Lucian took me to wasn't the kind of place I'd ever dared to enter. No prices displayed in the window, just elegant mannequins draped in fabrics that looked like they cost more than my car. A woman in a perfectly tailored suit greeted us at the door, her practiced smile widening with genuine warmth when she saw Lucian. "Mr. Moretti, what a pleasure. How can we assist you today?" "Vanessa needs a complete wardrobe." He gestured to me with casual authority. "Everything. Casual, professional, evening wear. Whatever she wants." The woman's assessing gaze swept over me, and I felt acutely aware of my wrinkled uniform, my bargain bin shoes, the way I didn't belong in this crystalline world of silk and cashmere. "Of course. Miss, if you'll follow me." She extended a hand toward the back of the store. I looked at Lucian, suddenly panicked. He seemed to read the fear in my eyes because he said quietly, "I'll be right here. Take your time." The next 2 hours were surreal. The saleswoman, Celeste, brought outfit after outfit, never once making me feel inadequate, despite the obvious gap between her world and mine. She listened when I said I preferred comfort over fashion, practicality over trends. She didn't push when I balked at a dress that cost $3,000, simply nodded and brought something equally beautiful but less extravagant. I tried on jeans that fit like they'd been sewn onto my body, soft sweaters in jewel tones that made my skin glow, dresses that made me look like someone who belonged in penthouses and expensive cars. Each time I emerged from the dressing room, Lucian looked up from his phone, his dark eyes traveling over me with an intensity that made heat pool low in my stomach. "That one," he'd say, or, "No, the blue brings out your eyes. Better," or simply nod his approval. His opinions weren't demands, just observations from someone with impeccable taste and too much money. And despite my determination to maintain independence, I found myself caring what he thought, wanting to see that flash of appreciation when I walked out in something that fit perfectly. "Try this," Celeste said, handing me a dress that made me catch my breath. It was deep emerald green, silk that felt like water against my skin, with a neckline that was tasteful but suggested curves I usually hid under baggy clothes. The back dipped low, and the fabric clung in ways that felt both elegant and dangerous. I almost refused. This wasn't practical. This was the kind of dress women wore to galas and expensive restaurants, not to job interviews or grocery shopping. But something reckless pushed me into the dressing room. The dress transformed me. The woman in the mirror wasn't a struggling waitress anymore. She was sophisticated, mysterious, the kind of woman who might actually belong at a man like Lucian Moretti's side. My auburn hair fell in waves over one bare shoulder, and the green made my eyes look almost luminous. I walked out before I could lose my nerve. Lucian was typing something on his phone, but he looked up as I approached. Whatever he was about to say died on his lips. He went completely still, his eyes darkening as they traced the lines of the dress, the curves it revealed, the confidence it somehow gave me. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. "Well?" I said, my voice not quite steady. "Too much?" "No." The word came out rough, almost guttural. He stood slowly, crossing the space between us with predatory grace. He stopped close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Not too much. Perfect. His hand lifted, hovering near my shoulder as if he wanted to touch but was restraining himself. The almost contact was somehow more intimate than if he'd actually made contact, and I felt my breath quicken. "Lucian, we're taking this one," he said to Celeste without breaking eye contact with me. Then, softer, meant only for me. "Even if you never wear it again, I need to remember how you look right now." The intensity in his words, the raw honesty, made something tighten in my chest. This wasn't just attraction, this was something deeper, more dangerous. We were standing on the edge of something neither of us fully understood, and one wrong move would send us tumbling into territory we couldn't come back from. "I should change," I whispered. "Yes." But he didn't step back, didn't break the spell woven in the space between us. "Vanessa." His phone rang, shattering the moment. He cursed softly in what sounded like Italian, pulled it from his pocket, and his expression changed instantly. The man who'd been looking at me with undisguised want vanished, replaced by the cold, calculating boss I'd glimpsed at the diner. "I have to take this." He was already moving toward the door, the phone pressed to his ear. "Marcus will take you back to the penthouse. I'll have everything delivered." "Wait." But he was gone, his voice carrying from outside in sharp, clipped sentences in a language I didn't understand. I stood in the middle of the boutique in a dress that cost more than 6 months' rent, feeling suddenly unmoored. The fairy tale had crashed back into reality, reminding me that Lucian Moretti wasn't just a man with a tragic past and generous heart. He was dangerous. He lived in a world of violence and secrets, and phone calls that could transform him from warm to cold in a heartbeat. "Miss?" Celeste's voice was gentle. "Shall I wrap everything up?" I nodded mutely and went to change, but my hands trembled as I slipped out of the green dress. In the mirror, I could still see the ghost of how I'd looked, wearing it confident, beautiful, desired, wanted by a man I was starting to want in return. Marcus drove me back to the penthouse in silence, his professional demeanor revealing nothing about where Lucian had gone or what the phone call had been about. When we pulled up to Apex Towers, he turned to face me, his expression serious. "A word of advice, Miss Barrett?" I nodded, surprised he was speaking at all. "Mr. Moretti is a good man. Better than most people know." Marcus's eyes were kind but warned. "But his world is complicated, dangerous. If you're going to stay in it, even temporarily, you need to understand that everything has consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that can't be undone." He opened the car door for me. "Just be careful. For both your sakes." I wanted to ask what he meant, but he was already pulling away from the curb, leaving me standing in front of the gleaming tower with more questions than answers. Inside the penthouse, I found my belongings had arrived from my apartment, 3 boxes that contained everything I owned in the way world. The pathetic pile sat in the foyer next to a mountain of shopping bags from the boutique, the contrast almost laughable. My old life fit in 3 boxes. My new life came in designer bags. I was unpacking when my phone buzzed. "Lucian, I'm sorry I had to leave. Business that couldn't wait. Did you get everything you needed?" I stared at the message, at the careful politeness that felt like distance after the intensity of how he'd looked at me in that dress. "Yes. Thank you. Is everything okay?" The response took longer this time. "Define okay. Nothing you need to worry about. I'll be back late. Don't wait up. Back. As in, coming to the penthouse." The thought sent a thrill through me that I immediately tried to suppress. "This is your place. You don't need to tell me your schedule. It's your place now, too. And I always tell people I care about where I am. People I care about." Those words shouldn't have meant as much as they did. I barely knew him. This arrangement was temporary, practical, nothing more. But my treacherous heart didn't seem to understand that. I spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking my meager belongings and trying not to think about Lucian coming home late, about what business meant in his world, about whether I should be awake when he returned or safely locked in the bedroom pretending to sleep. At midnight, I was still awake, curled on the leather sofa with a book I wasn't reading, watching the city lights and listening for the elevator. When it finally chimed at 1:30, my heart jumped into my throat. The doors opened, and Lucian stepped out. His Henley was gone, replaced by a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up and the top buttons undone. His hair was disheveled, and there was a tightness around his mouth that spoke of stress or pain or both. But it was his knuckles that made my stomach drop. They were bruised, split, stained with blood that might not have been his own. "You're awake," he said, his voice carefully neutral. I set down the book and stood slowly. "Your hands." He glanced down as if just noticing. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." I crossed to him before I could think better of it, reaching for his damaged hands. He let me take them, let me examine the torn skin and swelling knuckles. "What happened?" "Business." The word was a wall, sharp and unyielding. "The kind of business that involves hitting people?" His jaw tightened. "Sometimes." We stood there in the dim light of the penthouse, me holding his bloodied hands, him watching me with eyes that held violence and vulnerability in equal measure. This was the moment I could walk away, could acknowledge that this world was too dark, too dangerous, too far from everything I'd known. Instead, I tugged gently on his hands. "Come on, let me clean these." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. "You don't have to." "I know." I led him toward the kitchen. "But I'm going to, anyway." And as I cleaned his wounds with warm water and gentle touches, neither of us acknowledged the truth hanging between us. We were falling into something neither of us knew how to stop. Lucian sat at the kitchen island while I cleaned his knuckles, his silence heavy with unspoken words. Up close, I could see exhaustion carved into his features. Shadows beneath his eyes, tension in his shoulders that spoke of burdens I couldn't begin to imagine. "This is going to sting," I warned, dabbing antiseptic onto the worst of the cuts. He didn't even flinch, just watched me work with that unnerving intensity, as if I were the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. "You've done this before?" he observed. "My mom. After her treatments, she'd get so weak that even bumping into furniture would leave her bruised and bleeding. The memory ached, but talking about her to someone who understood loss made it easier. I learned to be gentle." His good hand, the left one, reached up to catch my persicular wrist, stopping my movements. "I'm sorry you had to learn that so young. I'm sorry you had to learn violence." I met his eyes, saw the flash of something dark and painful there. That's what tonight was, wasn't it? Violence. He released my wrist, his expression shuddering. "You don't want to know the details of my world, Vanessa." "Maybe not, but I want to know you." The admission came out before I could stop it, raw and honest. "And if violence is part of who you are, then I need to understand it." "Why?" The question was almost anguished. "Why would you want to understand this? You should be running, should be packing those 3 boxes and getting as far from me as possible." "Should I?" I resumed bandaging his knuckles, my touch as gentle as I could manage. "Is that what you want?" The silence stretched so long I thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, no. God help me, no." His confession hung between us, weighted with meaning we weren't ready to examine. I finished wrapping his right hand, then moved to his left, less damaged but still bruised. His skin was warm under my fingers, and I became acutely aware of how close we were, how intimate this moment felt, despite the clinical nature of what I was doing. "A rival family," he said suddenly, his voice low. "They've been testing boundaries, pushing into territory that isn't theirs. Tonight I reminded them why that's a mistake. You hurt someone." "Not a question. I hurt several people." His eyes held mine, unflinching. "And I'd do it again to protect what's mine." That's who I am, Vanessa. I'm not a good man trying to do good things. I'm a man who does terrible things for reasons I tell myself are justified. The honesty in his words was brutal, clearly meant to push me away. But I'd seen the way he looked at his godmother, the careful way he'd treated me, the pain in his eyes when he spoke of his mother. Lucian Moretti might do terrible things, but he wasn't a terrible man. "Everyone has darkness," I said, quietly, finishing the bandage. "The question is what you do with it. And you think using it to build an empire of blood and money is noble? I think using it to protect people who can't protect themselves matters. even if the methods are questionable. I stepped back, putting necessary distance between us. You saved me, Lucian. Whatever else you are, whatever you've done, that matters too. He stood abruptly, his height and presence overwhelming in the confined space of the kitchen. Don't make me into something I'm not. Don't romanticize the monster because he showed you kindness. I'm not. I held my ground even as he moved closer, even as the air between us charged with tension that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with the pull I'd been fighting since the diner. I see exactly what you are, and it terrifies me, but it doesn't change the fact that when I look at you, I see someone who understands pain. Someone who's trying to rewrite an ending they couldn't. Control. You see too much. His voice was rough, almost angry. He reached up, his bandaged hand cupping my face with surprising gentleness. And you're too brave for your own good. Or too stupid. No. Never stupid. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I felt that touch everywhere. Reckless, maybe. Stubborn, definitely. But not stupid. We were standing too close, breathing the same air, balanced on a knife's edge between sense and surrender. His dark eyes searched mine, and I saw the war raging behind them, wanting to protect me, knowing those two desires were fundamentally at odds. Lucian, I started, not knowing what I was going to say. His phone shattered the moment, buzzing insistently in his pocket. He cursed, pulled it out, and whatever he saw on the screen made his expression harden. I have to go. He was already moving toward the door, the vulnerable man vanishing behind cold professionalism. There's been a complication. At 2 a.m? My business doesn't keep regular hours. He paused at the elevator, something flickering across his face. Lock the door after I leave. Don't open it for anyone except Marcus or me. Understood? Fear iced through me. Is there danger? There's always danger. He stepped into the elevator, then stopped, his hand preventing the doors from closing. Vanessa? Thank you. For this, he lifted his bandaged hand. For not running. I'm too tired to run anymore, I admitted. Something like pain crossed his features. Then rest. You're safe here. I promise you that. The doors closed, and he was gone, leaving me alone in a penthouse that suddenly felt too big, too quiet, too full of questions I didn't want to ask. I locked the door as he'd instructed, then stood at the windows watching the city below. Somewhere out there, Lucian was dealing with complications that required middle-of-the-night meetings and split knuckles. Somewhere out there, he was the man people feared, the boss who made decisions that might end lives. But here, in this moment, he was just someone who'd let me bandage his wounds and thanked me for not running. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, though I knew who it was before I opened it. Sleep, Vanessa. I'll be watching to make sure the lights go out. L. I looked out the window, scanning the buildings across from us. And there, in an office building 3 blocks away, a light burned in a single window. Too far to see details, but close enough to know someone was there, watching, protecting. I should have felt violated, surveilled. Instead, I felt safer than I had in months. I texted back, "What if I'm not tired?" His response came immediately, then read, "But know that I won't rest until you do." That's manipulative. That's honesty. Everything about you makes me want to protect you, even from your own stubbornness. I stared at those words, my heart doing complicated things in my chest. This was insane. I'd known him for barely 48 hours. I shouldn't care whether he slept. Shouldn't feel this overwhelming need to know he was safe. Shouldn't want to be the reason he rested. But I did. Then I'll sleep, but only if you promise to do the same. The pause before his response felt eternal. I promise. Dream well, beautiful girl. And thank you for seeing me as more than the monster I am. You're not a monster. You're just someone fighting battles I can't see. And you're someone who makes me want to be the man I could have been. Now sleep, before I come back up there and carry you to bed myself. The image that conjured Lucian lifting me, his arms strong and sure, carrying me to that massive bed sent heat flooding through me that had nothing to do with embarrassment. Good night, Lucian. Good night, Vanessa. I turned off the lights and went to bed, hyper-aware of the fact that somewhere across the city, Lucian was watching to make sure I did. And as I lay in the darkness, wrapped in expensive sheets, in a penthouse I didn't belong in, I acknowledged the truth I'd been avoiding. I wasn't falling for Lucian Moretti. I'd already fallen. and nothing about this would end well. Not for someone like me, tangled up with someone like him, in a world where violence was currency and love was a liability. But as sleep finally claimed me, my last thought wasn't of danger or consequences, or the inevitable heartbreak waiting down this path. It was of bandaged hands and dark eyes, and a man who'd promised to protect me even from myself. And that promise felt more real than anything I'd known in a very long time. I woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee, and for a disorienting moment, I thought I'd dreamed everything. But then I saw the shopping bags still piled in the corner, felt the silk sheets against my skin, and knew that this strange new reality was mine. The coffee smell was real too, which meant I wasn't alone. I pulled on the plush robe I'd found in the bathroom, probably worth more than my entire wardrobe from before, and padded out to the kitchen. Lucian stood at the counter in dark slacks and a white shirt, no tie, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread about powerful men at leisure. His hands were still bandaged, and exhaustion lined his face despite the early hour. "You didn't sleep," I said. He looked up, and something in his expression softened when he saw me. "A few hours. Coffee? Please." I slid onto a bar stool, watching him pour with practiced ease. "Did you resolve your complication?" "For now." He set the cup in front of me, and our fingers brushed in the exchange. The contact sent electricity up my arm, a reminder of last night's almost kiss that still hung between us. These things are never really resolved, just managed. That sounds exhausting. It is. He leaned against the counter, studying me over his own cup. But it's my life. My responsibility. The empire my father started and I expanded it doesn't run itself. This was the first time he'd mentioned his father beyond saying he'd died. I sensed dangerous territory but couldn't resist asking, what happened to him? Lucian's jaw tightened. He was killed. A rival family decided they wanted what he'd built, and they took him out in front of a restaurant where he'd taken my mother for their anniversary. His voice was flat, emotionless, but his eyes told a different story. Old pain, old rage, never fully healed. I was 15, barely old enough to understand what we'd lost, but old enough to swear I'd make them pay. Did you? Every single one of them. The cold certainty in his words should have frightened me. Instead, I felt a twisted kind of understanding. If someone had hurt my mother deliberately, I wasn't sure what I'd be capable of either. It took 5 years, but I erased that family from existence, and I made sure everyone knew why. The man standing across from me had killed people, multiple people, had planned it, executed it, and felt justified doing so. This wasn't abstract violence or self-defense, this was calculated revenge. "You're afraid now?" he observed, reading my expression with unsettling accuracy. "Good, you should be." "I'm not afraid of you." And strangely, it was true. "I'm afraid of your world, of what it might do to me if I stay in it, then leave." But the way he said it, almost pleading, told me he didn't want me to. "Walk away now, before you're in too deep." Before, the elevator chimed, cutting him off. We both turned as the doors opened to reveal Marcus, his expression grim. "Boss, we have a problem." Lucian's entire demeanor shifted, the vulnerable man vanishing behind cold authority. "What kind of problem?" "The Russo family knows about her." Marcus's eyes flicked to me, then back to Lucian. "They've been asking questions. At the diner, at her old apartment. They know she's here." Ice flooded my veins. "Who are the Russos?" "The complication from last night." Lucian's voice was deadly, calm, but I saw the fury burning behind his eyes. "They've been testing me, and apparently, they've decided to escalate." "What does that mean?" But I already knew. Could see it in the way both men were looking at me like I'd become a target, a weakness they needed to protect. "It means you're leverage now." Lucian set down his cup with careful control, as if afraid he'd shatter it otherwise. "It means I made a mistake bringing you into my life, and now you're paying for it." The self-recrimination in his words cut deeper than the danger. "This isn't your fault. It's entirely my fault." He rounded the counter, gripping my shoulders with bandaged hands that trembled slightly. "I saw you struggling and I had to play savior. Had to insert myself into your life without thinking about the consequences. And now the Russos will use you to get to me." "How?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "What would they do?" Marcus answered when Lucian couldn't seem to. "Kidnapping, ransom, or worse, they might hurt you just to prove they can, to show Mr. Moretti that his protection means nothing." The casual way, he said, "Hurt you. made bile rise in my throat. This was real, not a movie or a book, but actual danger that could result in my actual pain or death. I need to leave, I said, pulling away from Lucian's grip. I'll go back to my apartment, or find somewhere else. I'll disappear. You think they don't know where your apartment is? Lucian's voice was harsh. They've already been there, Vanessa. You go back to that neighborhood. You're dead within 24 hours. Then what do you suggest? Anger flared through the fear. That I hide here forever? That I become some prisoner because you decided to be charitable? I suggest you let me protect you. He moved closer, his intensity almost overwhelming. I have safe houses, security, resources they can't match. You stay with me, under my watch, until this is resolved. And how long will that take? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. You don't know, I whispered. This could be weeks, months. My entire life on hold because I accepted help from the wrong person. The pain that flashed across his face was visceral. I know, and I'm sorrier than you can imagine. But right now, your life depends on trusting me. Maybe I should go to the police. The police can't protect you from the Russos. Marcus's tone was gentle but firm. Half of them are on various family payrolls anyway. You'd be signing your death warrant. I looked between them, these men who lived in a world where police were bought, where violence was currency, where a waitress could become collateral damage in a war she didn't understand. This was insane. All of it. I need air, I said, heading for the windows even though I knew they didn't open. I need to think. There's no time to think. Lucian followed me, his voice urgent. Pack a bag. Essentials only. Marcus is taking you to one of my properties outside the city, somewhere they won't think to look. Alone? I'll join you tonight, but right now, I need to handle this. I need to make it clear to the Russos that you're off limits. How will you do that? His expression went cold, the mask of the Mafia boss settling into place, the same way I handle everything. With overwhelming force and absolute certainty. You're going to kill people. Not a question. If necessary. No apology in his voice, no regret. They threatened what's mine. There are consequences for that. What's mine? As if I belonged to him, as if 2 days of kindness gave him ownership of my life. I should have been furious at the presumption. Instead, some primal part of me thrilled at being claimed, at being worth protecting, at mattering enough to someone that they'd wage war to keep me safe. This is insane, I whispered. Yes. He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. But it's the reality now. And I swear to you, Vanessa, I will end this. I will make you safe again, even if it costs me everything. Why? The question tore out of me. Why risk everything for someone you barely know? His thumb brushed my cheekbone, the gesture achingly tender despite his bandages. Because when I look at you, I see something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope, goodness. A reason to be better than the monster my father's death made me. His voice dropped to a whisper. Because you bandaged my hands and didn't run. Because you make me want things I have no right to want. Lucian, don't. He stepped back, severing the connection. Don't tell me you feel it too. Don't make this harder than it already is. But I did feel it, this impossible pull toward a man who represented everything I should fear, everything I should avoid. I felt it in the way my heart raced when he was near, in the way his pain became my pain, in the way I'd already started thinking of this penthouse as home. Miss Barrett, we need to go. Marcus stood by the dockal elevator, his expression sympathetic but unyielding. Now. I looked at Lucian one more time, memorizing the angles of his face, the darkness in his eyes, the way he looked at me like I was both salvation and damnation. Promise me you'll be careful, I said. I promise. He pulled something from his pocket, a phone, sleek and black. This is secure. Only Marcus and I have the number. Keep it on you at all times. I took it, our fingers lingering in the exchange. When will I see you again? Tonight. And Vanessa? He caught my wrist as I turned to leave, pulling me back for one brief moment. This isn't goodbye. This is me keeping you alive so we can have the future I'm already imagining. Then he released me, and Marcus was ushering me into the elevator with a hastily packed bag, and the doors were closing on Lucian, standing alone in the penthouse, looking every inch the dangerous man he was. As we descended, Marcus said quietly, "He cares about you. More than he should. More than is smart. That makes you both vulnerable." "I know," I whispered. but it also makes him more dangerous than he's ever been. Because a man like Lucian Moretti, protecting something he loves, he'll burn the whole city down if he has to. The elevator reached the ground floor, and as Marcus led me to a waiting car, I realized the truth. I'd stopped being a charity case the moment Lucian Moretti decided I was worth protecting. Now I was something far more dangerous. I was the weakness of the most powerful man in the city, and in his world, weaknesses didn't survive long. The safe house was a cottage nestled in woods 40 minutes outside the city, so different from the gleaming penthouse that it felt like entering another world entirely. Exposed beams crossed the ceiling. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and through the windows, I could see nothing but trees stretching in every direction. Beautiful, isolated, a prison disguised as paradise. Marcus did a thorough sweep of the property before leaving, showing me the security system, the panic button that would bring armed men within minutes, the weapons hidden in strategic locations throughout the house. He spoke in the calm, efficient tone of someone who'd done this before, who knew exactly how to protect assets that had become targets. "Mr. Moretti will be here by nightfall," he assured me at the door. "Don't open this for anyone else. Don't go outside unless absolutely necessary. The perimeter is monitored, but stay within sight of the house." "How long will I have to hide like this?" Marcus's expression softened with something like pity. "As long as it takes. I'm sorry, Miss Barrett. This isn't the life anyone should have to live." Then he was gone, and I was alone in a cottage that felt simultaneously cozy and suffocating. I spent the afternoon exploring my cage. The kitchen was fully stocked. The bedroom held a 4-poster bed that looked hand-carved, and the bathroom had a clawfoot tub that under-dyed. Different circumstances would have been a luxury. Books lined the shelves, classics, thrillers, romance novels that felt cruelly ironic given my situation. The secure phone Lucian had given me stayed silent. No calls, no texts, just the weight of it in my pocket reminding me that somewhere in the city, violence was unfolding because I'd accepted help from a dangerous man. At 4 p.m., I couldn't stand it anymore. I typed out a message. "Are you okay?" The response came quickly, as if he'd been waiting. "I'm fine. Are you settled?" "As settled as someone can be in witness protection." "What's happening?" A longer pause this time. "I'm handling it. Don't worry about the details. People are getting hurt because of me. I deserve to know the details. No one is getting hurt because of you. They're getting hurt because they threatened you. There's a difference." I stared at that text, at the subtle distinction he was making. In his world, violence wasn't cause and effect. It was choice and consequence. The Russos had chosen to target me. The consequences were on them. I don't know how to live in a world where that logic makes sense. "Then it's good you're not staying in it permanently. This is temporary, Vanessa. I promise you that." "What if it's not? What if this becomes my life, hiding, afraid, dependent on your protection forever?" His response took so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then I'll have failed you. And I don't fail people I care about. Not anymore." The certainty in those words should have comforted me. Instead, they terrified me, because I could hear the unspoken promise beneath them. He would do anything, sacrifice anything to keep me safe, even if it destroyed him in the process. Lucian arrived at 7 p.m., just as the sun was setting and painting the trees in shades of amber and gold. I heard the car before I saw it, then watched through the window as he emerged, looking exhausted and tense. His shirt was different from this morning. He'd changed at some point, though his bandages remained. I opened the door before he could knock. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. His dark eyes traced my face as if confirming I was real, unharmed, still here. Then he stepped inside and pulled me into his arms. The embrace wasn't romantic or sexual, it was desperate, raw, the kind of hold that said I needed to know you were safe without words. His heart hammered against my ear, and I felt the tremor in his muscles that suggested he'd been running on adrenaline and fear for hours. "I'm okay," I whispered into his chest. "I'm right here." I know. But he didn't release me, just held on like I was the only thing anchoring him to sanity. "It's handled. The Russos know you're off limits now." "How did you—" I started, then stopped. I didn't actually want to know. Didn't want to picture what handled meant in his world. He pulled back enough to see my face, his hands framing my jaw with aching gentleness. "You don't need to know the details. You just need to know you're safe." "For how long?" "Permanently." The word was absolute. "I made it clear that touching you, threatening you, even thinking about you, would be a death sentence. They believed me. Because you're that powerful? Because I'm that ruthless when something I care about is at stake. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and the gesture shifted something between us from relief to awareness, from gratitude to desire. And I care about you, Vanessa. More than is wise, more than is safe. But I can't seem to stop. My breath caught. Lucian, I know this is insane. I know I have no right to feel this way about someone I met 3 days ago. But when Marcus told me they were asking about you, when I realized they might hurt you to hurt me, his voice broke slightly, revealing cracks in his armor. I've never been that afraid. Not when they killed my father. Not in any fight I've been in since. Nothing has ever terrified me the way losing you did. You can't lose something you don't have, I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. He already had me. Had owned me from the moment he'd looked at me in that diner and seen past the uniform to the person drowning underneath. Can't I? His forehead pressed against mine, our breath mingling in the small space between us. Because it feels like I'd be losing everything if something happened to you. This is moving too fast. I know. We barely know each other. I know. This could be trauma bonding or proximity or just, it's not. His certainty cut through my protests. I've lived 32 years without feeling this. I know the difference between wanting someone because they're convenient and wanting someone because they make you believe you could be more than the sum of your sins. His words undid me. All my careful defenses, all my logical arguments about why this was impossible, they crumbled under the weight of his honesty. I'm scared, I admitted. Good, so am I. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my face up to his. But I'm more scared of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. Lucian, tell me to stop. His lips hovered over mine, so close I could feel the heat of them. Tell me this is a mistake and I'll walk away. I'll keep you safe. I'll give you the penthouse. I'll make sure the Russos never bother you again. But I'll give you space if that's what you need. It was the out I'd been looking for. The escape hatch from this impossible situation. All I had to do was say the word and he'd step back, would let me hide behind professional distance and temporary arrangements. But looking into his dark eyes, seeing the vulnerability he rarely showed, feeling the way his hands trembled slightly as they held me, I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it. Don't stop, I whispered. The words were barely out before his mouth claimed mine. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined, not gentle or tentative, but fierce, consuming. Months of loneliness and years of isolation combusting in the space between us. His lips moved against mine with desperate hunger, and I responded in kind, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer, closer, needing to eliminate every inch of space that separated us. He walked me backward until my spine hit the wall, his body pressing against mine in ways that made every nerve ending spark to life. His hands were everywhere in my hair, on my waist, sliding under the hem of my shirt to find bare skin that burned under his touch. I'd been kissed before, but never like this. Never with this intensity, this certainty, this feeling of falling and flying simultaneously. This was what people wrote songs about, what made people do stupid things and take impossible risks. This was worth it. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine again. His eyes were dark, pupils blown wide, and I saw hunger there that matched my own. Stay with me tonight, he said, his voice rough. I'm not asking for more than you're ready to give. I just need you close, need to know you're safe. Okay, the word came out breathless, shaky. He kissed me again, softer this time but no less devastating. Then he took my hand and led me to the couch, pulling me down beside him so I was tucked against his side, his arm wrapped around me protectively. We sat in silence as darkness fell outside, the woods coming alive with night sounds. His fingers traced patterns on my arm, idle touches that felt more intimate than passion, more meaningful than words. Tell me something true, he said eventually. Something you've never told anyone. I thought about deflecting, about keeping some part of myself protected. But he'd been so honest with me, had made himself so vulnerable. He deserved the same. I'm terrified I'll disappoint you, I admitted quietly. That you'll realize I'm not worth all this, the danger, the protection, the risk. That I'm just an ordinary girl who got lucky when you walked into that diner. His arm tightened around me. You want to know what I see when I look at you? What? Someone who worked herself to the bone rather than give up. Someone who's known real loss but didn't let it make her bitter. Someone brave enough to accept help even when pride said she shouldn't. He tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. Someone extraordinary pretending to be ordinary because the world told her she wasn't enough. Tears stung my eyes. You don't know me well enough to see all that, don't I? His smile was sad. I know what it's like to be underestimated. To have people look at you and see only what they expect, the struggling waitress, the violent criminal. But I see you, Vanessa, and what I see is worth protecting. I kissed him then, pouring everything I couldn't say into the contact. And as he kissed me back, his hands gentle despite the violence they'd committed today, I let myself believe it. Maybe this was crazy. Maybe it would end in heartbreak. But for tonight, wrapped in his arms in a cottage hidden from the world, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to make this impossible thing work. We stayed on the couch for hours, talking in the darkness punctuated only by the firelight Lucian had coaxed to life. He told me about growing up in a world where loyalty was currency and weakness meant death, about the uncle who'd tried to take control of the family after his father died, about the brutal lessons he'd learned at 15 that shaped him into the man he'd become. I told him about my mother's final months, about holding her hand as she slipped away, about the guilt that came from feeling relief when the suffering finally ended, about the loneliness that followed, the sense of being unmoored in a world that suddenly felt too big and too indifferent. I haven't talked about her like this since the funeral, I admitted, my head resting on his shoulder. Everyone wants you to move on, to be strong, to stop dwelling, but sometimes I just want to remember her without having to perform grief the way people expect. Then remember her with me. His lips pressed against my temple. Tell me what she was like. So I did. I told him about her terrible singing voice and her obsession with crossword puzzles, about the way she'd always burned toast but made the best pasta sauce I'd ever tasted, about her laugh that came from her belly and filled whatever room she was in, and talking about her to someone who actually listened, who didn't try to fix my grief or rush past it, felt like the greatest gift anyone had given me. She would have liked you, I said eventually. Would she? Lucian sounded doubtful. Your mother probably didn't envision you ending up with a criminal. She would have seen past that. The way I do? I shifted to look at him, taking in his profile illuminated by firelight, strong jaw, aristocratic nose, eyes that held too many shadows. She always said the measure of a man wasn't what he did for a living, but what he did when no one was watching, how he treated people who couldn't do anything for him. And you think I passed that test? I think you gave a struggling waitress a penthouse with no expectations. I think you remembered your godmother and visit her regularly. I think you made sure I ate and slept before you did the same. I reached up to touch his face, feeling the slight stubble along his jaw. I think you're better than you believe you are. His hand covered mine, pressing it harder against his cheek. You make me want to be. The vulnerability in those words broke something open inside me. This man, this dangerous, powerful man was looking at me like I held the key to his salvation, like somehow my belief in his goodness could make it real. Lucian, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I could no longer contain. He kissed me before I could finish. But this kiss was different from earlier. Slower, deeper, weighted with meaning that went beyond desire. His hands cupped my face like I was something precious, something that might break. And he kissed me like he was memorizing the taste of me, the feel of me, as if this moment might be all we'd ever have. When we broke apart, both trembling, he rested his forehead against mine. I should take the spare room. Put distance between us before this goes somewhere we can't come back from. What if I don't want distance? The words came out braver than I felt. What if I want exactly where this is going? His eyes searched mine, dark and intense. You've had the worst few days of your life. Your world has been turned upside down. I won't take advantage of that. Won't let you make decisions you might regret when things settle. Stop deciding what I can handle. I shifted in his arms, straddling his lap so we were eye to eye, so he couldn't look away from the certainty in my expression. I'm an adult, Lucian, and I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you, Vanessa. His hands gripped my hips, holding me steady even as his body responded to our position. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine in ways that go beyond protection or charity. And I don't share. I don't do casual. Once I have you, I'll fight hell itself to keep you. The possessiveness in his words should have set off alarm bells. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my belly. Maybe I don't want casual either. Maybe I want someone who fights for me instead of walking away when things get hard. Something fierce and primal flashed in his eyes. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He stood with me in his arms, and I wrapped my legs around his waist as he carried me toward the bedroom. The gesture was effortless, as if I weighed nothing, and the casual display of strength made my pulse race. He laid me on the bed, with surprising gentleness, then stood back, giving me space, giving me one last chance to change my mind. I sat up and pulled off my shirt. His sharp inhale was audible in the quiet room. His eyes traced over my skin with reverence, like I was art he didn't deserve to touch. You're beautiful. So damn beautiful it hurts to look at you. Then stop looking and touch me. He moved with predatory grace, climbing onto the bed and caging me beneath him. His mouth found mine again, and this kiss had teeth, want and need, and barely restrained hunger. His hands explored with agonizing slowness, learning every curve, every sensitive spot that made me gasp. Tell me if I hurt you, he murmured against my neck. Tell me if it's too much. It's not enough, I breathed, arching into his touch. He laughed, low and dark. Greedy girl. I like that. Clothing disappeared piece by piece, and with each barrier that fell, we became more exposed, not just physically but emotionally. This wasn't just sex. This was surrender, on both our parts. Him letting someone see past the violence to the man beneath. Me trusting someone enough to be this vulnerable, this open. I need you to know something, he said, pausing when we were skin to skin, his body poised at the edge of claiming mine. This matters. You matter. This isn't just physical for me. I know. I pulled him down for a kiss that said everything I couldn't put into words. It's not just physical for me either. When he finally moved, when we came together in the firelit darkness, it felt like something clicking into place, like two broken pieces finding their match, their completion. We moved together with increasing urgency, and I felt myself spiraling toward something overwhelming, something that felt bigger than just pleasure. Look at me, he commanded, his voice rough. I want to see you when you fall apart. I forced my eyes open, meeting his gaze. And the intensity there, the possessiveness mixed with tenderness, the hunger mixed with something that looked dangerously like love, pushed me over the edge. I cried out his name as pleasure crashed through me, and he followed moments later, his forehead pressed to mine, my name a prayer on his lips. We lay tangled together afterward, hearts racing, breath slowly returning to normal. His hand traced lazy patterns on my spine, and I felt utterly safe despite everything. The danger outside, the impossible nature of this relationship, the uncertain future waiting for us. I'm falling in love with you, he said into the darkness, his voice barely audible. I know it's too soon. I know it's insane, but I need you to know. Because if something happens tomorrow, if this all falls apart, I want you to know that you mattered, that this mattered. Tears pricked my eyes. Nothing's going to happen. You don't know that. His arms tightened around me. My world is unpredictable, dangerous. And now that the Russos know about you, other families might see you as leverage too. I've made you a target by caring about you. Then we face it together. I tilted my head back to look at him. I'm not running, Lucian. Not from you, not from this. Whatever comes, we handle it. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and heartbreaking. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Can't I be both? His laugh rumbled through his chest into mine. Yes, God help me, yes. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time in 6 months, I didn't dream about loss or loneliness or fear. I dreamed about futures that might actually be possible, about love that could survive in darkness, about a man who'd promised to protect me and might actually keep that promise. But in the early morning hours, his phone shattered our peace. I felt him tense before I fully woke. Felt him reach for the device and answer in a voice that went from sleep soft to deadly alert in seconds. What? A pause then. When? Another. Pause. And I felt his whole body go rigid. I'm on my way. Double the security. Nobody moves without my authorization. He hung up and was already moving, pulling on clothes with efficient speed. I sat up, clutching the sheet to my chest, fear icing through me. What's wrong? The Russos. His voice was flat, controlled, which somehow made it more terrifying. They hit one of my clubs 20 minutes ago, burned it to the ground. 3 of my people are dead, 2 more in critical condition. Horror crashed through me. Oh my God, this is retaliation. He turned to look at me, and his eyes held a coldness I'd never seen before. For making you off limits. For threatening them. They're showing me they can still hurt what's mine. Lucian, get dressed. Marcus is on his way to take you to another location. Somewhere even more secure. He was checking a gun I hadn't known he had. His movements precise and deadly. I have to go handle this. Have to show them that killing my people has consequences they can't survive. You're going to kill them. Not a question. And this time, I understood. This wasn't abstract violence. This was war, and he was going to wage it with everything he had. Yes, no apology, no hesitation. Every single one of them who was involved, and anyone who gets in my way. He crossed to me, cupped my face, and kissed me hard. I love you. Remember that. Whatever happens next, remember that you made me believe I could be more than this, even if I can't be right now. Come back to me, I whispered against his mouth. Promise me you'll come back. I promise. Then he was gone, and I was alone in the cottage with the scent of him still on my skin and the taste of goodbye on my lips. And I realized with devastating clarity, loving Lucian Moretti meant loving someone who might not survive his own world. The question was whether I was strong enough to love him anyway. Marcus arrived 30 minutes later, his expression grim as he escorted me to yet another car, another safe house, another cage designed to keep me alive while the man I loved waged war in the streets. This location was even more remote. A cabin on the edge of a lake, surrounded by enough security cameras and armed guards that it felt like a military compound disguised as a vacation retreat. How bad is it? I asked as Marcus did his security sweep. He hesitated, then seemed to decide I deserved honesty. 3 dead, 5 injured. The club was one of Mr. Moretti's oldest establishments. It had sentimental value beyond the business. They knew exactly where to hit him to make it hurt. And what will he do? What he always does when someone crosses that line. Marcus's eyes held sympathy mixed with resignation. He'll make an example that ensures no one ever tries again. I spent the day pacing the cabin, jumping at every sound, checking my phone obsessively for messages that didn't come. The news showed footage of the burned club, twisted metal and charred wood, emergency vehicles with flashing lights, reporters speculating about gang violence and mafia wars. They showed pictures of the victims, young men with families, with futures that had been stolen because they worked for Lucian Moretti. Guilt ate at me like acid. These people died because Lucian had protected me, because he'd drawn a line around me that the Russos decided to erase in blood and fire. At 3 p.m., my secure phone finally buzzed. Are you safe? Yes. Are you? Physically, yes. Otherwise, I don't know anymore. The exhaustion in those words made my heart ache. How many? A long pause. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. I need to know, Lucian. I need to understand what loving you costs. 7 Russos dead. Their second in command barely alive but will be once I'm done questioning him. Their operations crippled. Their territories claimed. And their boss knows that by morning, he'll either surrender or join his men. I stared at those words, at the casual accounting of violence that would horrify any normal person. 7 dead, 7 families destroyed. 7 lives ended because this was how Lucian's world worked. Violence begetting violence in an endless cycle. I'm sorry. For what? For being the reason this happened. For making you care enough that they could use it against you. The response came quickly, almost angry. Don't you dare apologize for existing. Don't you dare take responsibility for their choices. They killed my people. They burned my property. They escalated a conflict I was trying to contain. This is on them, not you. But if I hadn't accepted your help, then you'd be homeless or worse. And I'd be exactly what I was before you walked into my life, powerful, wealthy, and completely empty. You gave me something worth protecting, worth fighting for. Don't take that away by blaming yourself for the violence that was always part of my world. Tears streamed down my face as I typed. When can I see you? Soon. I have to finish this first. Have to make sure you're safe, not just today but permanently. That means removing any trace of the threat. Be careful. Please. I'm always careful. But Vanessa? Thank you for worrying. Thank you for caring enough to be afraid for me. No one has done that in a very long time. I set the phone down and cried for the men who'd died, for the violence Lucian had to commit, for the impossible situation we'd found ourselves in. But underneath the grief, something else burned. Determination. I loved him. Loved a man who killed to protect what was his, who lived in a world of blood and ash, who would burn down empires to keep me safe. And if I was going to love him, truly love him, I needed to understand what that meant. needed to accept the darkness alongside the light. Lucian arrived just after midnight, and I knew immediately that something had changed. He stood in the doorway looking like he'd walked through hell, his clothes stained with ash, and what might have been blood, his face pale beneath the soot, his eyes holding a weariness that went soul deep. But he was alive, whole, here. I crossed the room and threw my arms around him, not caring about the dirt or smoke or violence he'd been immersed in. He held me like I was oxygen, and he'd been drowning, his face buried in my hair, his hands shaking slightly where they gripped my waist. "It's over," he said finally, his voice hoarse. The Russos surrendered. Their boss signed over his territories and operations in exchange for being allowed to leave the city alive. "They're gone, Vanessa. The threat is gone." Relief crashed through me so intensely my knees nearly buckled. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He pulled back enough to see my face, his thumbs brushing away tears I hadn't realized I was crying. "You're safe now. You can go back to the penthouse, back to your life, back to being free of all this." The way he said it, like he was offering me an exit, like he expected me to take it, made something fierce rise in my chest. "And what about you?" I demanded. "What about us?" Pain flickered across his expression. "You've seen what my world looks like now. You know what loving me means: violence, danger, fear. I can't ask you to stay in that. Can't ask you to spend your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if the next threat will be the one I can't stop. You're not asking. I'm choosing." I gripped his shirt, forcing him to look at me. "I choose you, Lucian. Not despite the darkness, but with full knowledge of it. I choose us. You could have a normal life? I don't want normal. I want real. And this," I gestured between us, "this is the most real thing I've ever felt. You make me feel safe and terrified and alive all at once. You see me, Lucian, all of me, and you don't try to fix or change or improve me. You just love me." "I do." His voice broke. "God help me. I love you more than I've ever loved anything. More than is safe. More than is smart. Then stop trying to push me away." I pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like smoke and desperation and coming home. "Stop trying to protect me from yourself. Let me love you. Let me stay. I'm covered in blood and ash," he murmured against my mouth. "I've killed people today. How can you want me after seeing what I am? Because I see who you are beneath it all. I see the man who cries for the people he lost, who visits his godmother, who gave a desperate waitress a second chance." I touched his face, feeling the exhaustion and pain etched there. "You're not a monster, Lucian. You're just someone trying to survive in a world that demands monstrous things." He kissed me then with bruising intensity, as if trying to pour every emotion he couldn't voice into the contact. We stumbled toward the bedroom, shedding his ruined clothes, washing away the evidence of violence in the shower where he held me under the water and broke, truly broke, letting me see the cost of the war he'd waged to keep me safe. "I killed for you today," he whispered as water streamed over us. "I destroyed lives, ended futures, became the worst version of myself, all to ensure you could live without fear." "I know." I held him while he shook. "And I'll carry that weight with you, not because I approve of violence, but because I understand that in your world, there's no other way to protect what you love. Let me help you carry it, Lucian. Let me be strong enough for both of us when you need it." We made love in the darkness afterward, and it was different from the night before, slower, more desperate, weighted with the knowledge of how close we'd come to losing each other. This time, when he moved inside me, when we came together with whispered declarations and desperate touches, it felt like a promise being sealed in skin and sweat and surrender. "I love you," I said as we lay tangled together, hearts gradually slowing. "I love you, and I'm not leaving. Not now, not ever. You're stuck with me, Moretti." His laugh was exhausted but genuine. "I can think of worse fates." "Like what?" "Like living the rest of my life without you." He pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Like never knowing what it felt like to be loved by someone who sees all of me, the good, the bad, the irredeemable, and chooses me anyway. Always," I promised. "In the darkness and the light, in the danger and the peace, I choose you, always." We returned to the penthouse the next morning, and this time, it felt different. Not like a refuge or a hiding place, but like home. Our home, filled with possibility instead of fear. The city spread below us in the morning light, beautiful and brutal and ours. Lucian stood behind me at the windows, his arms wrapped around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you decide what you want your life to look like." His lips brushed my temple. "You can go back to school, start a new career, pursue any dream you want. I'll make sure you have the resources and safety to do it. And us? We build something. Carefully, patiently. I introduce you to my world slowly, teach you how to navigate it safely. You help me remember there's more to life than power and violence." His arms tightened. "We learn how to be together despite everything working against us." I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd saved me, endangered me, and loved me all at once. "That sounds perfect. It won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is." He smiled a real smile, not the almost smile, but something full and genuine. "How did I get so lucky? You walked into a diner at 2 a.m. and saw someone who needed saving." "No." He kissed me softly. "I walked into a diner at 2 a.m. and found someone who would save me, and as the sun rose over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and promise, I knew he was right. We'd saved each other not from the danger or the violence or the darkness that would always be part of his world, but from the loneliness, from the isolation, from the fear that love was something we'd never find. We'd found it in the most unlikely place, between the most unlikely people, and we'd fight like hell to keep it. Because some loves are worth the danger, worth the sacrifice, worth choosing every single day despite the darkness. This was one of them. And I'd never been more certain of anything in my life.